as we know it today has been greatly influenced by those who have lived before us. With the help of a few influential leaders such as Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks, Helen Keller, Winifred Claire Stanley, and James Peck, we will explore their contributions and see how their actions helped shape today's Alabama. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was the person who led the civil rights movement in the United States. He was inspired by advocates of nonviolence such as Mahatma Gandhi. King sought equality for African Americans, the economically disadvantaged, and victims of injustice through peaceful protest. He was the driving force behind watershed events such as the Montgomery bus boycott and the March on Washington, which helped bring about such landmark legislation as the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965. King was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 1964 and is remembered each year on Martin Luther King Day, a U.S. federal holiday since 1986. Many of you know Rosa Parks because she refused to give up her seat on the bus. During the 1950s, African Americans did not have the same rights as Caucasian Americans. During this time, buses were segregated so that majority of the bus was occupied by Caucasian Americans and only a couple of seats in the back were for African Americans. Her actions and her arrest called for the 381-day Montgomery bus boycott that helped launch nationwide efforts to end segregation of public facilities. The city of Montgomery had no choice but to lift the law requiring segregation on public buses. Helen Keller is the flower that grew from concrete. She was born a healthy child. However, at the age of 19 months, she became deaf and blind due to an unknown illness. Her parents wanted the best for her, so they hired a teacher to help her. Her teacher's name was Anne. Over time, she was able to spell words due to her teacher drawing letters in her hand when she would hand her an item or talk about an object. Her vision was partially restored after multiple surgeries, and with that, she was able to read and learn how to speak. Throughout life, she persevered and was able to be an example to all children who have the odds against them. Winifred C. Stanley was an advocate for equal rights for women. Stanley was the first representative to propose that employers be required to pay women equal pay for equal work when she introduced H.R. 5056. This principle was later enacted in the Equal Pay Act of 1963. As a woman, it was hard to receive rights, let alone a voice to be as established as she went on to be. Racism was prevalent in the 1900s. Mr. James Peck was a pacifist, and during the Second World War, he was a conscientious objector and an anti-war activist, and he spent 2 years in jail. After the war, he worked as a journalist. He was also a member of the Fellowship of Reconciliation and the Congress on Racial Equality. Mr. James Peck endured a lot of violent acts against him for his beliefs and for his actions. However, he stood up for what he believed in non-violently, and today all races are equal. Throughout the millennium, we have witnessed a lot of influential people, from blind deaf people overcoming their obstacles, to the abolishment of slavery, to the equality of men and women, as well as the equality of all races. A lot has been accomplished with the help of people who believed in a dream and worked hard to achieve it. The lesson here, ladies and gentlemen, is to speak your mind and to remember your voice matters. Never silence it.